Good evening. This is Scotty Sanders coming to you live by Facebook. Hope you're able to join tonight. If you're able to get online, let me know that you've jumped in. Just always good for me to know. So listen, again, this is Scotty Sanders. I'm an international leadership consultant, and what I love getting to do is helping people to lead well. See, my purpose in life is to encourage and to empower others to live, lead, and finish well. So when I get to do Facebook Live, there's hopefully some good encouragement in there, but also some empowerment that I provide some tips, some advice, some insights to help you to lead yourself well, not only to live well, to lead well, and to finish well. So thanks for joining me. Let me know if you've jumped on. Tonight I'm going to be talking to you about Scotty's 5 E's to execution. And what I've found in working with lots of different organizations through the years is most organizations and individuals, they really struggle with execution. They struggle with getting things completed, getting things done on time, and getting it done with excellence. So I want to talk to you what I think are 5 things that will help you be able to execute at really an expert level. And when you hear this, it may not be anything surprise, but what it does is somewhat it gives you a little bit of a formula to follow. And I kind of remind myself when I'm doing projects, over the last maybe 8 years, 7 years, my wife and I have done 5 books together. Now she's done some on her own. Everyone I've done, she's been involved in, but I follow this formula of doing a book. We're working on a movie project for Quest of the Keys, and we're working with writers to come up with the movie script. I follow this formula. I've launched 2 global initiatives, and I followed this formula. Or it could be some simple project or new product or some event. I would follow this formula. So again, I want to talk to you about these 5 E's to execution. And I really think it will help you execute at a much greater level. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. So the first E is engagement. Okay. So engagement. So what do I mean by engagement? I mean, you've got to bring your level of passion to any project you're involved in. And you may have heard me say in the past, but it's so true. And I've seen this play out. Passion is contagious. So when you want that first engagement, when your passion, that catches on to the next person. And there also needs to be a level of commitment on your end and anybody else that's involved in the project. If there's not commitment, you're going to have a hard time getting that project completed. Okay, so when I'm working on a book project, so I want there to be passion on my side, there needs to be commitment on my end, but if I'm working with a publisher or another writer or an editor, I want them to be committed to the project as well. And then the third thing under that first E is this. It's the relationship side of things. So one of the things, I think it plays to my strength a little bit because I really have a desire for this. But when you're trying to get someone to work with you on a project, something that needs to be executed on, execution needs to happen, you need to have a relationship with them. So rather than just jumping in immediately, make sure you've got a good rapport. There's some likability there. Get to know them. Find out what they enjoy doing. How do you play to their strengths? So that's the first E, and that is engagement. Okay. The second E is explanation. You've got to be very clear on your explanation to make sure people understand that's going to be a part of it. So when I'm working on a book project, I want to make sure that I explain clearly to my publisher what the book is about, what the purpose, so what's the vision behind the book. And I remember when we worked on Quest of the Keys and we were having a brainstorming session, and I had probably 6 or 7 people on this call. We had my developmental editor, I had our creative director, I had a 19-year-old teenager who's going to be a contributor. One of my children was involved in it, my wife. But I want to be really clear on the vision that I had for the book. It wasn't just to write a fantasy fiction book, but it was to be able to use the book to encourage and empower others to develop to discover their purpose, unlock their potential, and live with passion. So I want it to be clear. I want it to be a great story, but if it didn't have that didactic piece, it would miss the purpose behind it. So again, a good explanation of what it was about. So there need to be good communication. We need to have clarity. We need to be aligned, all going in the same direction, or we may accomplish something, but it may not be what we need it to accomplish. So that's the second E. The third E is expectations. So the first one, engagement, then explanation, and the third E is expectations. Make sure, again, back to clarity. I'm big on clarity. Make sure the expectations are clear for something you need to execute on. If it's a new product, if it's an event that you're doing, if it's a new product, whatever it may be. It could be new software that you're launching. Make sure you're very clear on the expectations, such as asking these questions of making sure they're clear on the quality you're looking for, because not everything needs to be perfect or at such a high level, but you want to make sure they understand this is the level of quality we're going for. Also, what cost, what budget, what funds do you have that would go toward this? If not, it could be something cost you a lot more than you anticipated. And then also deadlines. Be very clear on deadlines. I'm kind of fanatical about deadlines. And I'm okay if you have a different deadline than me. I just want to know what that deadline is. I want to be clear, because if not, there's going to be disappointment on my end. And people that work with me can tell you, yep, make sure if you give Scotty a deadline that you hit it. I remember being at a marriage conference years ago that Gary Smalley that was leading. And I remember that he said the number one challenge or issue in marriages is unmet expectations. And I think that goes really for any type of relationships. I mean, think about that when you have someone maybe reports to you and you gave them a deadline, but it wasn't clear and they end up being 2 weeks late or a month late or 3 months late. You know, that can cause a problem. Or you think about when you missed a deadline with your boss and how that can be a problem. So making good clarity on the expectations. And here's something else. In fact, I use this principle just the other day when we were meeting with the writers for the Quest of the Keys movie that's working on the script. I gave them what I call a comp of a movie that I felt like had the perfect vibe of what I was looking for Quest of the Keys. And I'll go ahead and tell you this. And so one of my all-time favorite movies, and I said, in fact, these were young writers. I said, you may not even remember this, and it's probably maybe before you were born, but the movie Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with Kevin Costner. I said, that movie has the perfect vibe for what I want to see with Quest of the Keys. Similar storyline, but it also had, you know, some levity in it that I liked. The stakes were still high. There's still a level of violence, but not over the top violence. There were some romantic parts to it, but not over the top. It gave them a comp. And in fact, I said, you may not have ever had anybody do that with you, but that's one of the ways I want to make sure I'm clear on my expectations. I want something that looks and feels like that. And they said, hey, that's fantastic. That really helps us. And they love the movie and they plan to go back and watch it. Again, we're not trying to make the second version of Robin Hood, but it gives a good comp. So if you can give an example or a comp of something, that will help. So that's the third thing on expectation. So again, first is engagement. Second, explanation. Third, expectations. And the fourth E is empowerment. At some point, if you've got people on your team that you're working with, you've got to empower people. You've got to trust them. Then you've got to resource them. Make sure you give them what they need to execute what you've asked them to execute. So you've got to trust them. You've got to resource them. And then you want to make sure that they keep you updated along the way. You know, just get updates, but you don't want to be micromanaging that. That's not empowerment. That's micromanagement, okay? So empowerment, you've got to get other people involved. One of the neat things on every book project I've worked on, or even these global initiatives, it was the empowerment piece. My job was really to give a clear vision, set the expectations, and then empower others to do what they had expertise to do that I didn't have expertise. So it was a very collaborative process. I played to my strengths, but I let others play to their strengths. And we get to all celebrate what happened versus it was just my thing. I feel like I work with teams of people to get these things done. And so again, back on the different E's. The first one is engagement. Second, explanation. Third, expectations. And then number 4, empowerment. And then last, Lastly is evaluation. If you don't evaluate it, you don't get better. How you learn, you don't learn through going through experiences. You learn by evaluating your experiences. So here's some things you want to consider on the evaluation of how can we improve. So it's always about how do we iterate. In a book project, it's all about iteration, rewriting and editing to make it better and better and better. Most of the time is spent on rewriting and the iteration, the improving process. And then you get into proofing. It's a great example of how you go through improving and iterating anything that you're involved in. A book is an example of that. The second thing, what can I learn from this that when I do the next book or the next project or the next event or the next product that I can take with me to the next one? I believe every book project we've done has gotten better because we've learned along the way. Same thing goes for events or products that we've been involved in. And then again, learning leads to growing, right? You learn when you evaluate your experience, not just go through experience. I know people have had many years of experience, but they've never learned. They've never grown from that. And the last thing I would say is ask good questions as part of the evaluation process. Ask questions like, what went well? It's good to kind of recap, man, this worked great. This was fantastic. Or ask this, what needs to change? Or what do we need to eliminate? Maybe there's a step in the process or someone that shouldn't be involved that may not be a part of it the next time. So what went well? What needs to change? What was confusing? Again, I love what Donald Miller says. He says, if you confuse, you lose. And that is so true in any major endeavors that you do. You don't want things confusing for people. So you want to ask the question, what was confusing? If there's people on your team, they're a little bit confused, imagine the person that's going to experience it as the end product or read the book. If your team's confused about a point you're trying to make, imagine the person reading it or experiencing the end product. Okay, so what was confusing? And then fourth question you can ask, what was missing? What other resources do we need? Do we need a different graphic person? Do we need a different proofer? Do we need, somebody else that had more artistic ability? Did we need more marketing funds? Did we need more personnel? Did we need more time? Ask what was missing, the resources of that. Okay, so those are the 5 E's to help you to execute at an expert level. I keep those in my mind every time I'm going through any major project or event or a new product or a new book. I'm wanting to work through my 5 E's. And what I found, it's not going to make it always perfect, but it's certainly going to help you to make sure that you have a better chance of executing at a much higher level. Again, to recap, those 5 E's is first, you start with engagement on your part. Then you want to make sure you do a good job explaining what you're going for. And then you want to make the expectations clear. You want to empower people to do what they do best. And then you want to always be evaluating because there's more to be done the next time. You evaluate. When you evaluate things, that's how you learn and grow to get better in the future. Now, let me ask you, what would you say would be your biggest takeaway from tonight? I'd love for you to post that. That encourages me to see that. One of these E's that you may want to expand on and say, this really spoke to me. What is your biggest takeaway? And then post that for me. And then, oh, by the way, let me recommend a couple books to you on execution. The first one is a book called Execution. I cannot remember the author's name, but I've read that book at least 2 times, and it may have been a 3rd time. And then another book I've read 2 different times is I think it's called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. Okay, 2 books on execution would encourage you to read. Okay, so what is your biggest takeaway from my talk tonight? And then the other thing I'd ask you to do, if you're interested in helping others and you feel like this talk helped you, please hit the share button. That's a way that you can help me to accomplish my purpose, which is to encourage and to empower others to live, lead, and to finish well. Well, listen, I hope you have a great rest of the week. And my friends out there, I want you to know I'm going to be leading well. I hope you will be leading well. Take care.